iteration related some properties, and we learned how to use even and odd occurrence related options. So working with even and odd occurrences. So one more option is there in the iteration properties actually. So we need to understand about how to deal with yeah. So in the iteration properties, yeah. So last session we done one example, and we need to continue with this iteration track by. What is this track by? So how we can handle this track by? So one simple point we will see. Technically, basic example for this track by. Track by is a function actually. Track by is a function. Generally, what you should know is iteration uh, is iteration in UI. Iteration in UI is controlled by ng for. That is the basic thing we know. So it performs iteration over elements every time. So whenever requested, iteration over all elements every time whenever required, over all elements every time whenever requested. Technically, it performs iteration over all elements every time, but we want the iterator. That means you can say that ng for. We want ng for to identify the changes occurred in iterations. Changes occurred in iterations. Counter and update the changes without iterating all elements again. That is important. We want ng for to identify the changes occurred in iterations, and update the changes without iterating all elements again. That means technically, I will show you practically this. Then we can understand how this actually works. So how it is handling options. Okay. So let's see this. So take how it actually does, right? So for that, we need to design one example. So let's create one example here. So add one example, a component here. I will open the terminal. Yeah. And here we are generating ng generate component track by track demo. Okay. Skip tests. Okay. We are configuring track demo and skip tests. And this is the basic one, right? Now here important is so once this component is generated, so let's keep this in the startup. So ng server-project is equal to Amazon. Okay. So let's go to the track by demo. In this, we are creating a collection of objects here. Let's add that. I am removing all this. Oh, so just we don't need any implementations of this. Yeah. So I'm cleaning up all the implementations because we haven't learned any what is on init and all that you are going to learn in the next levels, right? So now here, so we have public products is an array. It is an array of products. So product ID and name. So some name and price, some price. Okay. So that is the product. So similarly, I'm adding some products. So some 2, 3 products already we defined. So we are adding some products here. Okay. So this is 2 and 3. So we have some options like mobile, some Nike casuals. Okay. And here's some price. Oh, some data is there. Now we have some products information. Let's go to the design. And in HTML, we will create a screen for presenting actually. I will use a div class as container fluid. And here we have a div, so class as row. And we have a div and a class as call3. Okay. And another div, so class as call9. Okay. And here I'm defining a simple right side. First, we will keep a table. In the table class, we have table and table hover. Table hover, and we have t head. So in that th, tr, and th, we have product ID, and we have name, and we have price. And these details must be displayed in the table body. And here we are having a row. And this row should repeat ng for let item of collection. That is products. So here we said some product of products. Okay. So that is the product of products. And every product details should be displayed here. That is product ID, and second cell should display product name, and third should display product price, price. Okay, everything is configured, and let's go to the design. So and keep this in the startup. So track demo in the startup, track demo in the startup. Okay, and index we will keep track demo. We are defining track demo. Okay. So next, after understanding this, let's start. I think our application is ready in the background to run. Let's run this. So localhost, and this is displaying. So we have this data to display. Okay. Now, beside this, I want a registration form. So let's put a div class as form group and a label as product ID. And here a div, and we have text box. And I will keep as input type is equal to text, or say yeah. And important is something like ID should be automatically generated. So I will not give any ID. So let's keep this for name. So name, and text class as form control. That is the option here. Yeah. and another div. So this is class as form group, and here so label as price, and a div. So we have an input type is text, and a class as form control, and fine. Now one more div here. So class as form group, and the label as no label, just button. Let's keep a button as add product, and let's keep this as class btn, and btn primary. That's and btn block. Okay. Now you can see this. This is the design we have. So this is register, and this is product details. Here we have a heading as registered product, and here we have product details. So here we have details. Okay. So this is the design we have, register product and details. So that is in the column. So we are adding that, all right, in this column. So we will add it. Okay, fine, right. So this keeps everything fair. This is details. Now technically, so what we want here is text center. What we want here is when user enters the name and price and click on add, one new product should be added. So when new product is added, so how we can add it? That is the point. So just like our shopping cart example that we learned, the same approach we can define. So we need to add three details: product ID, name, and price. Three details we need. So what we will do is, so here we are declaring properties: public product ID, and public product name, and public product price. These are the three. So these are binded with these controls. So we have product ID, name, and price. So we need some data here, some data. Initially, the properties we are configuring here. Yeah, that is what we are going to see now, right? That is what we are going to see. That's the reason I haven't given any product ID. Why we haven't given any product ID? Because we want to automatically get that ID. How will get the product ID automatically assigned? That we will see that. This is product ID, name, and price. And what should be the product ID? Actually, the product ID's point is, so this dot products dot length plus 1. So that means it should be plus 1. That means how many items are there? Plus 1. That means it will be the next one, right? That is the product ID default. The product name and price, so we will get from text boxes. That means we need to bind with the text box. Name text box, this uses ng model, product name. Okay. And this is the price text box. It uses ng model. So that is product price, product name and price. We are configuring it. Now we need to collect the data, and we need to add into products collection actually. That means we will create another object called new product. This new product is an object. This new product is using the options, that is product ID. This will come from this dot product ID. This dot product ID. We are accessing and using product ID, right? What do you mean by remember ng model? Ashok Kumar, what exactly you are talking about? Yes, Ashok. What do you mean by remembering the function ng model? What you are talking about? You can speak. You are attending newly this session. Huh? What do you mean by how do we know ng model? Then what is your doubt at all, right? Okay, leave it so we can speak. What do you mean by introducing new function? Later we will talk about this, right? So first try to make your question correctly, right? Okay, next we have name. Name is coming from this dot product name. Product name is binded with that. And price is coming from currently what we will do is all these details we will keep empty initially. New product. So new product. So this is 0. That means it is expecting a number. It is string. It is expecting a text. Price is also 0. Is expecting a number. New product is currently empty. Nothing is defined. So let's create a method. Add product. Add product method. So must be called when you click the button add product. In that case, now what we will do is we will go to the button and define click is equal to add product. So add product is called when you are defining this. Okay. When add product button is clicked, I need to collect the data they entered in product name, price, and what is there in product ID. And I need to add this into new product. So that means what we have to do, this dot new product, it should contain product ID coming from this dot product ID and name coming from this dot product name and price coming from this dot product price. Actually, these are text boxes. In text boxes, whatever they entered, we are collecting them and we are storing in this. Now this new product must be pushed into the products collection, into this products collection. We need to push that into the products collection. Then you know how to push that into the new collection. This dot products is an array, dot push. Into that, we are passing this dot new product. Because if I want to push anything into this products, it should be a product type. It should be a product type. We created an empty product type. We are collecting the data from these details. These are binded with text box. This is getting the length and we are pushing that. And I will just put an alert saying that record inserted. That means it will just add the record inserted. So now what the point here is, you can see in the design. So as we configured in the design, right? Now, when you type some name, configured the name and define the name, right? So here we are configuring the name. So like I defined some boots, so Lee Cooper boot, something like this, and I entered some price. So, and I clicked on add product, then it says record inserted. Okay, that should be added here. We are adding that. We are configuring and adding that. We are inserting the new one here. And important is once you done this, suppose I am accessing this dot product name is equal to empty. We made it empty. And this dot product price also is equal to empty. So we are configuring that empty. That means actually, so when you refresh this, so by default, we have initially 3 details. I entered some name, some ear pods, okay, and some price. And I click on add product, inserted, and that is added, and it is cleaned up. You are keeping them empty. Now here in this type of adding approaches, generally what happens is, this is okay, this is good, so it is working fine. Observe in the background here. So you go to inspect, and here let's refresh this and go to the body section. So in the body section, so here we have this table. In the table body, you can see 3 rows are there. 3 rows are there. These 3 rows are generated, TR1, TR2, TR3. These 3 rows are generated. Right side, you can observe that 3 rows are generated. I'm entering some option like some earpods. Okay, some price. Okay, and click on add product and record inserted. And I click OK, and you can see that the new record is added. The new record is added. And you can observe that all are not affected here. All are not affected here. That's good. All are not affected here because you are pushing in only the new details and others are not repeated. So when it is adding, others are not repeated. So I entered some option like, that means every time I entered some watch, so and some price and click on add product and okay, you can see that only the new one is added here. That's good, it's working fine. And here the count should be incremented again because we are getting the count of what is already available there. What is already available there. When add product is clicked, at that time what count is there, that count must be get displayed there. That means actually this initially, so we defined that. So and every time, so when user adds, then the count should be increased. We need to get the fresh length and add that to this. That means we need to get, it is getting the previous one. That means it should get, so the product ID, it should get from the length, new length. That means if I say this dot products dot length +1, that means we am directly adding here because this is previously added. Now I'm not using any product ID. So let's comment this, right? I'm not using any product ID. Otherwise I need to call here also. I'm just using that new product. When add, the length +1 should be increased. In that case, what happens is, so I entered some details, some watch and some price and add product that is added and some say mobile, so some price and add product and it is incremented properly. That's enough actually. So that means you don't need a product ID separately configured, you can directly increment here because just for basic understanding, I given that. So here we don't need this, or we can repeat that separately, we can repeat it. Here the key point is, so we don't need this as of now, right? We can directly increment here. Otherwise declare a variable, increment that and add it here. You can do in any way. In this, there is no problem because only the new item added, you can observe that it is pushed into the iteration. Iteration is not working for all. Sometimes, especially when you are working with databases, generally we have API services and all. When you are specially working with databases and services, one problem you will get. The problem is what happens is usually the same URL we use to fetch the data. That means what we have to do is actually this coming from a service, some API, and the same URL is required every time. Then what it does is actually it reads this entire list every time, and it will add the new item also. That means whenever the list comes, so it is actually what we do is after adding the product, after pushing it, what we do is we call the products again. That means from API, we will get the products again and show the fresh list. So currently we are directly updating there, but we show the fresh list again. That means again we will get the data and add. Then when you are going to get the fresh list again fresh list. So what happens is all the rows are generated again. All the rows are generated again. All the rows are generated again. This issue regularly comes when you are working with databases. Regularly comes when you are working with databases. That is the major issue with databases actually. So this you can come across everywhere. You can come across with this, right? I will show you that issue. So this is general, how you are dynamically adding. Here you can add remove option, and how to remove also I told you, you can add that. That means on delete, again write a method and delete it. So this is fine. That means this example is example for default tracking change. This is default tracking change. For that I am using, so here track by, so track demo.component.ts. So this is track demo.component.ts. In that we are adding this logic. So that is the logic. And second, track demo.component.html. So HTML. So in that we are just adding this presentation. This is default tracking and it is having no problem. Now that problem comes especially when you are working with service. That also I will show you. Instead of dynamically adding, actually what I am doing is, so I will create another method, public. So add more products, or add products from add product from API, something like this, using API. So add products using API. That APIs and all you will learn later. Just observe the concept. Add product using API. Here what we do is generally the same data, whatever we are having, the same data we will have. That means here we will define this dot products is equal to same data, the same data, but one record extra added here. That means here we are adding as 4. One record extra added here 4. So that means add using API. When I click this, the 4th record, something like watch. So watch. And remember, it is added along with all the list. Along with all the list, it is what added. So you are updating this again with all the items. You may ask like why you are using all items, because again, why I'm using all items, because generally services will be called again and again. Then the same data will come with additional new details also. That means what is changed between previous and now. The previous and now is, previously we have 3 records, and when add product using API, we'll add one more to that table. That means what I will do is, I will keep a button here. So at the details, I have a button. So button. So add using API. So that's the option I given. On click, we have to call add product using API method. Now observe carefully. In this technique, that is the button we are having. I click on that. That means now 4th is added. we are adding dynamically by using this method and by using this API method. Observe the difference now. Go to the inspect. In the inspect, observe here in the body section. So the table, clearly observe here. This is the table with the table body. 3 rows are there. Observe when I click on add using API, all the rows are generated again. I click one more time, they are generated again. I click one more time, they are generated again. That means it is iterating every time, all of them. That means if no change occurred, why you are iterating them? That is complicated. That's not good. That means you should not repeat every time. You should not repeat every time. So that means better. So technically, you should not repeat every time. Better repeat and add only the change that occurred there. Don't repeat all of them. You see, I click that API button. It is adding one more time all of them. You can see all table rows are generated again. So we don't want that. Only the change. After adding the change, if no change occurred, this iteration should not repeat. Iteration should not repeat. Then how you do that? So then what we can do is we can create one method. We can create one method. So that is, suppose track change. This method, generally, this track change method can accept, so index, it can accept index and it can accept the product. You can send index or you can send the product. And what it has to do is, this should return, this should return, this should return. That means you can identify the change by using index number or by product, anything you can use. I will use product, dot product ID. It should return product ID, because product ID is the unique identification to identify where the change occurred actually. So that means now what happens is, it will check is there any change occurred in the product ID. If any change occurred in the product ID, then it will iterate only that change. It will add into that iteration. It will not perform iteration over all other elements. Now this track change function should be used by iterator. That means here in the iteration, we have to define semicolon track by. We have to use track by. Track by is pointing towards a function. Then we have to write track by with a colon, and what is the function name? The function name is track change, that function name. So track change, and you have to just point the function, not calling the function. That means what will happen is, the product ID is sent into this function. It is sent into the function. So it will point towards the function and it will first verify whether there is any change in the product ID. If there is any change in the product ID, then track by will perform this iteration again. Will perform that iteration, but remember, it will not iterate existing items. It will perform iteration only on the new items. It will perform iteration on the new items. It will add only new items now. It will not add all of them. That means track by is a function. It will verify whether any change occurred inside this iteration or not. It will verify whether any change occurred inside this iteration or not. After verifying any change occurred, then what should happen here? So technically what should happen here is, it should push only the changes occurred, not everything. It should push only the changes occurred, not everything. Let's see whether it is happening or not. That means after adding track by, is it having any change or not? Let's see. Now, currently, 3 options are there. Go to the table and observe the same content again. And in the table body, you see 3 rows are present. And I add using API. When I click add using API button, then you can observe that this time you can see only the last row is added. All are not generated. Only the last row is generated, just like how you added dynamically. And observe one more time. Here, I click add using API one more time. Then you can observe that when I click one more time, then it is not doing any iterations because there is no change detected in the ID. If there is no change detected in the ID, that means nothing is added. That means it may be adding, it may be removing. There is no change in the iteration, index or ID. In that case, then it will not perform that iteration. So what is advantage of this is every time it will not iterate all the items. It will perform iteration only over the new items. It will perform iteration only over the new items, only over the new items. That is what actually happens in general. Technically, so this is track by. So track by is used to identify the change and handle the change. You can pass index number also, iterator index number also, because iterator index also identifies the change. I just given both options, but we can use any one. You can return the index. So track change will identify is there any change in the index. But for index, you know that you have to pass I as index. So you have to create an index reference and pass. So generally, we don't use index. We use any unique reference for that. That is the good option for that. So that means any change occurred, because especially if it is coming from API or some database, we need to identify is there any change in the unique reference available for that application, right? So track change is an iteration property. Track by is an iteration property, but it is using a function. So that function will verify is any change occurred inside this iteration or not. If any change occurred inside the iteration, only that change will be updated. It will not perform iteration over all items again. This type of iterations are required, especially when we are working with API-like service. So same example. So same example, but some change. What we have to do is